In 2026, the United States, lowercase u, and I will explain that, will observe 250 years as a nation. Semi-quincentennial. Is there anything left to celebrate? Well, at least like all good birthday parties, they've hired a clown. I'm Larry Fedoruk, and this is Later That Same Life. On each episode of my weekly podcast, a different topic, discussion, commentary, or story from our lives.
Season 21, Chapter 3, America's Birthday.
250 years, America. May I offer my deepest sympathies, my heartfelt condolences on your loss. I'll bet a lot of people who were alive for the 1976 bicentennial expected to be alive for the 250. But I'll bet they didn't expect this. A nation in decline, divided against itself, on the precipice of economic collapse, with a warmongering pedophile president. From top line to punchline, happy birthday to you. No, I'll bet that a lot of people did not expect that this would be the State of the Union as it hits a milestone anniversary. But maybe they should have. America's July 4th birthday is called Independence Day. Their Declaration of Independence document was dated July 4th, 1776, although not signed and ratified until August of that year. The events leading up to this document and what came shortly thereafter really set the tone for what America was to be. When you know the history, in some ways, today seems inevitable. Here's some highlights. Firstly, there was a misconception that America's original English settlers were all angry Brits, yearning to break free from the kingdom. Actually, a lot of that came later. The early non-indigenous residents were largely explorers and opportunists, seeking wealth in the new land. Famously, the Mayflower brought the Pilgrims to Plymouth Rock in 1620, but ships had been coming to the new continent for over 100 years prior, from England, France, Italy, Spain. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, although probably never landed on mainland America, most likely the Caribbean, which he mistook for the new continent.
Columbo, the world she's flat. The world she's round. She's flat. Look, King, she's round like the apple. She's flat like the pancake. She's round like my head. She's flat like your head.
Amerigo Vespucci, well, he likely landed on the north coast of South America in 1499. John Cabot, well, he was actually in North America in 1497, thought to have landed somewhere in what is now Newfoundland. And of course, good old Leif Erikson, what a guy. He was believed to have landed on the continent 500 years before any of these guys. This Norse Viking was thought to be the first European to ever set foot in the New World. What I'm saying is, by the time of the USA's humble beginnings, this part of the world was already a going concern. The original 13 colonies were formed over a period of 125 years, starting with Virginia in 1607 and ending with Georgia in 1732. In between, there were Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Maryland, Connecticut, Rhode Island, North Carolina, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Pennsylvania, and South Carolina. These were British colonies, and there were 13. But nobody called them that. Nobody called them the 13 colonies. They were all independent and separate from each other. In fact, often competitive, and were individually ruled by wealthy Brits, some of whom still had strong connections to the old money back home. Then this happened. The British had been fighting the French, and that's an understatement. The Second 100 Years' War, the War of Spanish Succession, the War of Austrian Succession, Anglo-French War in the Americas, the 7 Years' War, aka the French-Indian War. Would you like an English muffin or French toast? For gosh sakes, pick a side. Either way, the British had run up quite a great war debt. They really needed money. Hey, they said, Why don't we tax those 13 colonies that we have in America? Income tax, import tax, tax, whatever. That would be a good source of cash. Ah, yes. Pip, carry on. Big surprise, the colonies, still 13 distinct entities, hated this idea. Well, most of them. Rather than pay tax on the goods, they threw British tea into the harbor. English breakfast tea, I suppose. With this threat of British taxation, it started to dawn on them that they needed, if nothing else, at least a united voice against their British oppressors. Thomas Jefferson, with eventual help from Benjamin Franklin and a few others, began composing the Declaration of Independence, stating that the 13 United States of America would form an alliance against British taxation, the right to tax, the right to govern, etc. Note that the words 13 and United were lowercase. They were merely adjectives, descriptors of those states of America. And the states were not forming a nation. As a matter of fact, they were recognized as 13 separate sovereign states, whose only common goal was to be not British. Well, as I said, they couldn't even quite agree on that. Some, in fact, leaned towards the side of jolly old England. But they needed one voice, so Jefferson and his cronies tried to get them all to meetings. Not everyone would show. The document was dated July 4th, but not signed by all until August the 2nd. It took a lot of negotiating and finagling, but eventually all 13 colonies at different times signed on. Declaration of Independence, including Articles of Confederation. They would be a league of friendship. Still not a country. Not even close, which is why it's odd that July 4th, 1776 is some kind of birthday. No country was really born that day. Out of this effort, though, they did form a Continental Congress, headquartered in Philadelphia. Each colony got one representative. They voted on things, sometimes even agreed, but they had no power. They could not pass laws, and even if they could, they had no way to enforce them. They were like an early neighborhood watch. Mostly, the colonies continued to fight and bicker with other colonies. They imposed tariffs on each other, didn't agree on much, not even their hatred of the homeland. The Brits responded to the Declaration of Independence with a declaration of war. War on these tax-evading colonies. War because that was their answer for everything. This was the American Revolutionary War. Paul Revere rode his horse, the British are coming, George Washington crossed the Potomac, and somehow this ragtag group of colonies defeated the Tommies. In 1783, the British and United States signed the Treaty of Paris, where the Brits recognized the U.S. as its own sovereign nation, which they really weren't at the time. Remember, the colonies were still quarreling and quibbling with each other constantly. Isn't it weird that they still didn't see themselves as one nation, but the Brits saw them as one enemy? Everybody signed the treaty. Though the Brits admitted defeat, they did not remove their armies. I mean, come on, they still had wars to fight against the French for Canada. This was unsettling for the colonies, because they too now had a war debt. Their old enemy still had forts nearby. They still fought amongst each other over trade and tariffs and territory and taxes. And watching all this was one James Madison. Madison saw clearly, this is not working. If we don't get our act together, we'll never amount to much. You know who else was really frustrated with the situation? The hero of the Revolutionary War, now living in semi-retirement, George Washington. He begins writing letters to everyone. We're becoming a laughingstock, said George, through clenched wooden teeth. So Madison tries to call a meeting. Again, almost no one shows up. Washington's old war assistant did show up, Alexander Hamilton. But still, hardly a quorum. Madison and Hamilton agree that trying to fix the old system is pure folly. What they need to do is tear the whole thing down and start over. This weak Continental Congress was like trying to herd cats. We need one centralized government, they said. A government who actually has power. Now, they knew that a lot of colonists would probably not like this idea. It's why many of them left England in the first place. There was too much power centralized in one spot. But they press on. James Madison is reading everything he can get his hands on about democracies, republics, and confederations. And he looked at the old Declaration of Independence and its Articles of Confederation, and he begins penning a sequel. Long story short, well, I guess it's too late for that. Sorry. But over many months, many meetings, many rewrites, by 1788, they ratify a U.S. Constitution. We, the people
of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America.
And a year later, appoint the first President of the United States, George Washington. So the gap between the Declaration of Independence, the so-called birthday, and the Constitution and first President of the United States, with a capital U, was about 13 years. 13 years to learn from the mistakes of the Articles of Confederation. Interesting when you break it down. One, they said we need to have a centralized government with real power. They can charge taxes, make laws, and have an army. Two, they can't have too much power, so this time we'll have a real Congress who makes the laws, an executive who enforces them, and a judicial system that will settle disputes. And everyone gets elected, except the judges. The judges are appointed by the president, and they can serve for life. Oh, and further, Congress will now be 2 houses. We'll have representatives by population from each colony to be elected every 2 years, so that the people can toss out a representative that they feel is not acting in their best interests. But we'll also have a Senate. Each colony state gets 2, regardless of its size, and they're elected every 6 years, so that they can have the bigger, better overview and not constantly be at the electoral whims of the voters. Oh, and we'll also elect the president from now on. Sort of. We'll set up a system of electors, an electoral college. Each state will get a different number of those depending on size, and people can elect those people, but then they will elect the president. Many people still think Americans elect their president, but really they don't. That's why there's always this dispute between who won the electoral college and who got the popular vote. Popular vote wins you bupkis. And lastly, they said, okay, the states themselves have to have power. So they will handle everything else that the feds do not. Incidentally, did you know that for years, U.S. senators were actually appointed by their state legislators? American voters didn't vote directly for their own U.S. senators until 1913. So yeah, you could vote for your state legislator, but then they appointed a senator to represent you in D.C. For 125 years, they did it this way. Here's a vital part of the Constitution that they wrote in 1788. It's what I call the just-in-case clause. U.S. Constitution. This is the way it is and shall be. Unless we realize that we got something wrong, then we're allowed to change it and amend ourselves. Well, that's not the exact wording, but it's the gist. To paraphrase Thomas Jefferson, do not expect a man to wear the same coat that fitted him when he was just a boy. Thank you, Jefferson. You're really moving on up. Within 2 years of this Constitution, this is the way it is, they passed 10 amendments. Those are mostly now known as the Bill of Rights. Isn't that interesting? These genius founding fathers wrote an entire Constitution without once thinking that they should include some human rights for their citizens. That was an afterthought. There was freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the right to bear arms, the right to a speedy trial, so forth. 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights. I've always loved that the U.S. First Amendment was freedom of speech, and then the second one was to bear arms. As if to say, you can say anything you want. Just remember that the other guy has a gun. Now, what was it you said to me? Over the next years, they ended up with another 17 amendments, like charging income tax, abolishing slavery, prohibiting booze, and then a later amendment that said, yes, you can have booze. The last amendment to the U.S. Constitution was in 1992. It was about congressional salaries. And the last one before that, the last real significant amendment, was 1971. It changed the voting age to 18. There hasn't been another amendment in at least 30 years. To propose an amendment, you need an act of Congress or a request from a majority of the states. And then it needs a 2/3 approval vote in both houses. Strange that over the first 200 years, 27 amendments were needed, 27 things needed changing, but in these last 50, everything is fine? It's not fine. Things need to change in America. The system actually does have a lot of stopgaps built in to prevent another king. But perhaps even the Founding Fathers didn't anticipate a president who would simply ignore the Constitution. They kind of did, but they'd probably be surprised at how one person can turn all of their systems against each other to maintain power and do whatever he wants. That's why Trump doesn't need amendments to the Constitution. He uses ignorements. He just ignores the law. The U.S. Constitution under Donald Trump has undergone 53 ignorements. I don't know, I just made that number up. It's probably a lot higher. We do know that as America is trying to celebrate 250 years of old glory, that the current president who is overseeing this historic year has faced 4 different criminal prosecutions, resulting in 34 criminal charges. He has been impeached 2 times. According to the New York Times, he has over 200 interconnected ventures involving the Trump family business, while he, as patriarch, occupies the Oval Office. Donald Trump's name appears over 38,000 times in the Epstein files, although to date only guilty by association. Fact-checking organizations have estimated that Trump averages 21 falsehoods per day. He has used the Department of Justice as his own revenge force. He fires people as if he were a reality show host. He's torn down the east wing of the White House to build himself a golden ballroom, and celebrated not only America's birthday but his own by staging a Neanderthal-like bare-fisted cage match on the White House South Lawn. Because nothing says America like bloody, violent confrontation. His idea of culture, besides Kid Rock, was putting his name on the Kennedy Center, while ensuring that his wife's documentary, Melania, was well funded by billionaires. He's invaded 2 countries and threatened to annex several others. He's made enemies of yet others with crippling tariffs. He cut U.S. aid to yet other nations, and has broken up American families with ICE agent raids. He constantly dozes off during meetings. He's prone to fits of rage. He's a narcissist with a persecution complex. And more than legend has it that he has no real control of his bowels. And he cheats at golf. This is the man you chose to lead you into your next semi-quin.
I pledge to give America the most spectacular birthday party the world has ever seen for America's 250th anniversary. Frankly, you'll never see anything like it, and you'll never see anything like it again. This will be a time like you've never had in your lives. America 250. Thank you. I love you all.
I used to think during his first term that, America, you're better than this. But now I think maybe you're not. I guess as Americans, you can still celebrate your birthday. You can stand up and remember better days gone by. Hot dogs, apple pie, driving your Chevy to the levee. You can still wave your flag. By the way, I think you have a pretty cool flag. Your anthem sucks, though. Your anthem is terrible. It's a war song. Rockets, red glare, bombs bursting in air. That's your anthem? Especially when you already have this other song out there, America the Beautiful. That's a great song. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown my good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Nah, no good. We want rockets and bombs. Then let's play ball. So, according to your own history, you are a country based on accumulating wealth, rich ancestors who didn't like to pay taxes. You obtain power through guns and slavery, a government system that's not really a democracy, trying to masquerade as one, and easily manipulated by those who have power and money. And you have no real will to change any of this, or to oust a wannabe king. You're not a democracy. And anybody who preaches democracy, as in, let's return some power to the people, you dub them a socialist. You're Oh, and your reflecting pool is currently diseased with slimy green algae that no one seems to be able to fix. If that's not the perfect metaphor for your nation right now, I don't know what is. On July 4th, you have a nice day.
Later That Same Life is written, voiced, and produced by Larry Fedoruk. Larry Fedoruk, 37, at gmail.com. Subscribe to Larry's YouTube channel. Get automatic notifications with each new episode.